Namaste. Very good evening. So today is 9th of December, 3:37 in the evening. So it is appropriate to say good evening. So namaste too. So what is there? What is stored for discussion today? So what is the topic? See, the topic today is that what I'm saying, what I'm trying to share is, see, there are these two philosophies when it comes to, let's say, culture, tradition, and then eventually something called spirituality. There's something called Hinduism and there is something called Buddhism. So Buddhism also has come through Hinduism in a sense that it began from Buddha. Now the topic is, see, in Hinduism there is something called self or soul. But then Buddha talks about no self. The Pali word is anatta, or the Sanskrit word is anatman. So there is this confusion. Why then in Hinduism there is something called soul, which we say Atman, the pure consciousness, the pure witnessing consciousness, the unchanging one, the unchanging consciousness, or the undifferentiated consciousness. And then why in the why then Buddha is saying, is talking of no self, non-self, which he in Pali said anatman. Anatman is in Sanskrit and in Pali it is anatta. So what is the difference? Is there really a confusion? Is it really some kind of contradiction? Or what is the explanation to this? So the topic is this. So I would like to share my thoughts, my insight on it. Why there is no confusion? There is in fact no confusion and there is no contradiction. Then how these two thoughts are going to meet? That's what we will discuss. You see, on Buddha's path, Buddha eventually talks about what is called nirvana, right? So nirvana is like enlightenment. So when Buddha talks about nirvana, he gives a kind of an example. So he says nirvana is like, it's something like when you blow off a lamp. See, think of a lamp. This lamp is burning and then you blow it off. That state is what is called nirvana. So that example is being given in Buddha's philosophy when we talk about nirvana. Then what is it? What is the metaphor of that blowing of the lamp? And when it is indicating of nirvana, of enlightenment, it is something like that. Whereas in Hinduism, it is something opposite. Like there we are talking about something like light, something like Chaitanya, something like the witnessing. So we are indicating as a suchak, as a metaphor, that the witnessing consciousness is something like a light. So there we are talking something like a lamp, a glowing lamp, a glowing consciousness, and here Buddha is talking about something like blowing off the candle, blowing off the lamp, and he is terming it as nirvana. And then when we go into the corresponding words like Atman, then he is talking about anatta, or he is talking about anatman, non-self, no self. Then what is this gap? What is this confusion? Is there a confusion? Is there a contradiction in these two? Let us say on an intellectual level, on these two philosophies. Eventually they are not philosophies. Whether it is Hinduism or whether it is Buddhism, it is an inquiry of your own self. So it has to be a self-discovery. But when we talk, when we discuss, when we share, it has to be on an intellectual level because we are talking. So we use mind, we use expressions, we use all kinds of tools necessary in a communication, right? So let us begin this talk. Now, on Buddha's philosophy, on Buddha's path, see, Buddha is talking about what? One or two key essential things. Buddha is saying that in this life there is something called dukkha. Okay, there is something called suffering. And then he is saying this suffering can cease. This suffering can cease to exist. And that is what he is saying nirvana. When you have the experience of nirvana, this dukkha ceases to exist. This is what he is saying. So there is something called dukkha. There is something called a way to remove that dukkha, that suffering. But what is it that is causing this dukkha? So he is saying all that is causing, the cause of this dukkha is desires, is what he is saying. Desires. Attachments. See, from desire comes attachment. From attachment comes dukkha. Dukkha means if you are attached with something, you are desirous of something, and you are in possession of something. When it goes away, if you part it from you, you have a kind of pain, uneasiness, unsatisfactoriness, and dukkha, right? So he is giving the cause of all this suffering, the cause of all this dukkha is those desires. That rag. So what is needed is vairagya, is what he is saying. And on this philosophy we saw that, okay, he gives up everything, and we call that path as a path of sannyasa, and we call renunciation. Renunciation means we give up. But then this is not that easy. It's not that simple, straightforward thing. See, if desirelessness, non-desiring, if all that means is to, let us say, give up or abandon or relinquish, if all that means is that, then suppose if you start starving yourself, if you start not eating yourself, then this body will die, no? Suppose if you don't sleep for days, don't take rest. Your body is asking for a rest. It is tired, maybe because of some work or whatever. You toil day in, day out, and then it is requiring, the body mechanism is telling you that you need to have some kind of rest. And then you are not taking rest, let's say you are not sleeping. And let's say your body is telling you that it is hungry, and then you are not giving food. And let's say it goes on for months, then what will happen? This body will become weak and eventually it will die. Or let's say water. Water is very essential. Food you can prolong for certain period, but water you cannot prolong for long. Let's say you don't have water, then okay, we all are breathing. See, for example, this tree is giving us oxygen. We are breathing oxygen. And whatever the carbon dioxide this tree is taking in. So just understand the cyclical thing in the nature. What kind of wisdom is embedded in the existence. See the cyclic thing. How we are interdependent on each other. We are dependent on this plant for oxygen. The oxygen in turn is dependent on us or many other things, from where the carbon dioxide comes in. So this is how two things are in the nature are dependent. Nature is giving us food and nature is giving us oxygen. We spoke about prana. Oxygen is a pipe for the prana to come and go. Suppose if you start not taking in prana, what will happen? I'll pop off. So what is this desire and not desire or non-desire then? What is this desire and what is this desirelessness? What is this virag and rag and virag? What is this vairagya then? So this got to have some different meaning, some deeper insights, right? That's what we are trying to probe in. If Buddha is right, let us say, saying that you don't have to desire, then just think of what has happened on his path, when he went on his path, on the story, the episode of Niranjana river. What happened on the Niranjana river? That he also walked on this path of asceticism, that starving himself, not eating anything. Okay? Then what happened? His body has become so weak that he was not even able to stand on the ground. It has become so weak because he has not eaten the food for so many months. And then what is that story? The story on that Niranjana river, that time's mother, sister, she gives that milk rice, what we call kheer. And in that moment, he realized the importance of food. See, the problem is that we go into extremes. Neither this extreme is good, nor that extreme is good. Neither attachment is good, nor detachment is good. There has to be a kind of balance. You cannot sleep and snore for hours, and you cannot also think of not sleeping at all. You cannot think of just eating and eating. And you cannot also think of starving and starving. So these are two extremes. And they are not going to help. And then Buddha also talked about balance, samyama. Right? So how that samyama will come then? How that balance and equanimity will come? If we start fluctuating to two extremes of this and that, desiring or not desiring, attachment or detachment, then there will never be a balance. So there is something called, see, neither a tyagi is right nor a bhogi is right. Both of them are wrong, because both of them are going to the two extremes of the philosophy of life. Then a balance is needed. That's why the Sakshi thing is there. Where from we are bringing that witnessing consciousness? So in Hinduism, if there is something called Chaitanya, pure consciousness, or that witnessing consciousness which has to become pure, that's why then meditation techniques. Why then meditation techniques? Because there is impurity, so the purity has to be brought in. We got to transform it. That's why mindfulness is needed. And that's why Buddha is also talking about right mindfulness. Is it not? So extremes will not help. Neither attachment will help, nor detachment will help. Neither rag will help, nor virag will help. Then what will help is vitrag, the transcendence of the two, the balance of the two. In balance, the transcendence will come. See, transcendence will be fourth. Third will be the balance. Like we have tamas and rajas, and then something called sattva. And from sattva, you will transcend and attain to the fourth, which we are calling turiya. The ultimate reality is in the fourth, which we said vikarma. Ultimate reality is not in time. It is beyond space and time. But so the balance is needed. Rajas, tamas, sattva. Rag, virag, vitrag. Tyagi, bhogi, sakshi. So the yogi has to be a sakshi. If the yogi is ascetic, if the yogi is a tyagi, then the yogi will not attain anything. Then it is stupid to call him a yogi. Yogi simply means an enlightened one, not the one who is walking on the path of yoga. Right? So then, when Buddha is saying that all this dukkha is because of that desire, then even this belief, even this only belief of self or non-self can be the cause of this dukkha too. Because you are carrying a wrong notion. Because neither belief will do nor non-belief will do. Who knows, Buddha might have played a joke. Why? Because you see, in Hinduism what has happened, Krishna is saying, ना आत्मा कभी मरती है, ना उसे कभी जलाया जा सकता है. So he is saying, it will not decay, it will not die, you cannot burn it in fire, you cannot do anything, you cannot mutilate it. So that is how he is describing how the Atman is. Then what happened? Krishna happened 5,000 odd years ago, and then we are just repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. So the whole culture of Hinduism, they are just simply repeating and repeating and repeating. If that is not so, then why we have been into slavery of some 300, 400 years? If the center of your being, which is the soul or Atman, if nothing can happen to it, because it is a Sachitananda Swarup, then if that is the case, then why slavery has happened? So that means we have misunderstood the message of Krishna. So probably Buddha must have played a joke in a sense. See, Buddha has always gave you the counter-polar thing. You know, in one of the stories, when a theist came, theist is a person who believes in the existence of God, but he is only believing. So when he came and asked Buddha, is there a God? Buddha said, no, there is no God. So he gave a counter-intuitive message, because Buddha knew that he is a believer. So he said, no, God doesn't exist. There is no such thing as God. So that opposite thing hits us. So it triggers us to probably Buddha's trick, Buddha's strategy, so that we start inquiring, so that it hits us so hard, at least we may start thinking. Because we are always sleeping and snoring. For thousands of years we are sleeping and snoring. आत्मा नहीं मरती है, आत्मा को जलाया नहीं जा सकता है. But that is a crap thing. It will not help. No. So probably this could be the reason. So our belief, my belief, whether soul is there or no soul is there, whether I believe in self, Atman, or whether I believe in Anatta or Anatman, that belief is not going to help me. How it is going to help me? Hence, inquiry is needed. Probably that is the reason Buddha must have played a trick. We don't know. Only he must be knowing it. So, no belief is needed. Let us just compare these two things, spirituality and science. I always keep on saying, see, in science, let us say Newton discovers the laws of, let us say, motion, laws of gravitation. Now that is a discovery, because gravity is part of the existence. It is already embedded in existence. So it is not an invention, it is a discovery. So nothing new, but a person has discovered it. We were not aware of it probably prior to Newton. That is how we are thinking, right? Now no new person has to discover it. That is enough. So I don't have to spin the wheel when it comes to gravitational laws. That is how science is. I have to discover or I have to invent something new. So when it comes to Albert Einstein and the theory of relativity, his discovery is enough. I don't have to discover it again. Or no other scientist has to spin the wheel. So this is how science is. But spirituality is not like that. If Buddha talks about Buddhahood, if nirvana happens to him, that nirvana or that enlightenment is of no use to me or you. We have to spin the wheel, we have to effort, we have to struggle, we have to discover. We have to find out ways and means. You can go on the path of Buddha and follow his methods. Right mindfulness is one amongst it. You can probably follow other approaches. I keep on saying yoga, tantra, Sankhya, Vedanta, whatever, or simply Chintan, Manan, Dhyan. If you don't want to go into anything, let's say, because Vedanta says only knowing is enough. You don't have to do anything. And that sentence is going to be truthful for any period of time. Only knowing is enough, and that is true. If Vedanta says only knowing is enough, you don't have to do anything, it is correct. It is 100% correct. But then you have to know it. No, you and me, we have to know it. Whatever the method that we follow, it can be simply Chintan, Manan, Dhyan, but we have to discover it. And Upanishads are keep on saying, discovery is not outside. When it comes to, so there are, let there be these things very clear. Science you have to discover outside. It's an outer inquiry. It's an outer effort. So in order to invent something, in order to discover the deeper realities of existence, science is the approach. But if you have to discover yourself, then science is not the approach. Science is not going to help you. Then spirituality is the approach. Because you want to discover yourself, your true self. From there we are saying the happiness is coming, or you say blissfulness is coming, or the peace is coming. See, how spirituality is going to help you, I told you. Simple. Your individual peace and bliss. Nothing beyond this. If you are thinking that on the path of spirituality that you will be able to fly in the air, no. You will be able to walk on water, no. You will be able to make water into milk, no. No such things are going to happen. They are all crap things and they have nothing to do with spirituality. Utterly crap. Don't even go into it. Okay? And Patanjali is saying that if you fall trap to siddhis, then there is a possibility enlightenment will not happen to you. Go and read in Patanjali Sutras, Yoga Sutras. Patanjali is saying very clearly, if you fall trap to siddhis, then nirvana will not happen to you. Then enlightenment may not happen to you. So don't go into crap things. You decide what you have to do. Is it the question of self-discovery? Then spirituality is the path. Is it a question of enterprise or science, like inventing something? Then you have to follow the path of science. So these two things are very important to me, science and spirituality. Science in the outer space, spirituality in the inner space. But mindfulness is needed on both. Suppose if mindfulness is not needed in both, see, one Baba falls off the elephant. Why this Baba is falling off the elephant? Tell me. And what it has anything to do with medication? I told you, Antata, eventually, dhyana means it has to happen to you and me. Dhyana is a happening thing. It's not a doing thing. But then, starting point is a doing. Without doing, you cannot reach to being. Because we are on the periphery. So in order to go to the center of your being, we have to start doing. But with right mindfulness, on the right path. I told you. If I am going towards Mumbai and I am in, let us say, Pune, thinking that it will take me to, let us say, Calcutta, it will not take, no. It is like that. So, inner path is inner path, outer path is outer path. We have to decide. Inner path is for self-discovery, outer path is for science, discovery of the mysteries of science. So the Baba falls from the elephant for the simple reason he is talking about dhyana. तो ध्यान नहीं था भैया, चढ़ते समय भी ध्यान चाहिए. मैं भी गिर सकता हूँ. See, it is something like going up the stairs, just simply like that. Just like how sometimes children fall down, we also fall down. So if I am going up, climbing the elephant, I have to be mindful, I have to be careful. And if I am coming down, even then I have to be careful. If I am going there and let us say I reached on the top of the elephant, and if I want to sit, let us say in some mudra, in some posture, let us say in a lotus posture, I will have to be careful. And there must be a guy down who must be taking control of that elephant. So that guy also has to be very careful, because he is the controller of that, he is the owner of that elephant. But all this has nothing to do with dhyana. It was a simple stupidity. So we spoke about dhyana. The moving from this to that. So there is a movement, but when you arrive at, when you reach your destination, it is like reaching your center, then that is being. We took many examples, so we are not going into this video about what is meditation. So that was not dhyana at all. So it was a false thing. This is where I am saying this is a falsehood in the name of spirituality. So this has nothing to do with spirituality. So we have to remove these non-essential things when it comes to desires. I talked about desires and needs. So we have to think what is desire and what is a need. Needs are small things which we have to fulfill. Desires may be infinite things. They may not even get fulfilled. So there is no point. So if you try and then if you don't achieve, then the frustration will come, then dukkha will set in. You can take a challenge, but if you are friendly with it, that this is my dream, I'm just trying for it, I will work for it. But no, if it doesn't come, I'm not bothered about it. It's a challenge that you're taking, then go for it. So if Buddha comes and if he's talking about nirvana, let's say if he talks about, let's say for 40 years, that's a vision, that's a big vision, that's a big dream. If Osho comes and let's say if he speaks for 30 years non-stop, and if he's talking about, let's say, enlightenment and speaking on various aspects of consciousness, then that's a big dream. So it requires a big challenge, it requires a big vision. Same goes with other masters. So you have to big dream, but you have to try how it can be actualized. So what I'm saying, I am not against dreaming, I am not against seeing dreams, but you have to find out ways and means to how to actualize them. If the dream is not made into actualization, if the dream is not actualized, then what is the point of just looking into dreams, is what I'm saying. So this is how these two things have come. Atta, which is Atman, and then Anatta, which is Anatman in Sanskrit, which is no self. Let us discover it this way. See, I keep on saying, whether it is there or not there, you think it this way. See, there are always two standpoints. As long as we are speaking from the mind, as long as the discussion is going to be, let us say, just intellectual, then this thing will go on like this, whether chicken has come first or egg has come first, and then you will never be able to solve this puzzle at an intellectual level, no matter you do what. That's why self-inquiry. So think like that. I'm saying, let's say it is me or you, think that it is like a circle. Why we are probing what we are saying, the self, the so-called self or Chaitanya or the Atman, we are saying it is an unchanging thing. So Buddha is saying there is nothing permanent. Everything is impermanent, everything is changing. And then he is saying there is nothing called unchanging self. So that is how that word Anatman came. And then there is this contradiction. This is contradiction. In Hinduism there is Atman, there is self. And in Buddhism there is Anatta, there is non-self. Then is there a conflict? This is what we are trying to say. So think that you and me, we are like a circle. Obviously this circle, it has to be a subset of a bigger circle. Let's say cosmic being. If this is an individual being, then the cosmic being. So this circle has to be a subset of this cosmic being. Right? Now what I am saying, think that this is a circle. And this circle has layers. So in this video we are not talking about body, then mind, and then emotions, and then silence, and then the soul. Just think, so it is that example. We spoke about that in many videos. So think that it is a circle and this circle has got a center. Think that this center is yourself. Obviously, now this circle has to be a subset of the cosmic circle, the cosmic being. So the cosmic being also has got a center. Because without center, circle cannot exist mathematically. Tell me, what is geometry? Periphery cannot exist without center, center cannot exist without periphery and without center, no circle can exist. Fine, mathematically clear. So mathematics applies to an individual being and a cosmic being. So I am saying this circle, the individual being, is a subset of the cosmic being, and both have got a center. This center is a common thing. It's a common center passing through. That is how the center is holding you. That's how the cosmic being is holding all of us. All other things in the cosmos. So the connecting thread, the connecting point is my center and the center of the cosmic being. So I am giving two standpoints, let's say from our side and from the point of view of the cosmic being. So if I see from the point of view of the cosmic being, everything on my periphery is changing and moving. I am not the same person when I started this video. You are not the same person when you started hearing this video. And you will not be the same person when you come to the end of this video, and this video has not yet come to the end. I am still speaking, my dear. And then Osho takes the example of Heraclitus. Heraclitus says that you cannot step into the same river twice because the river is changing, the waters are moving. It is not the same river. And Osho extends it little further and he says, you cannot even step into the same river twice. It is like that. Every second things are changing. Every moment things are changing. I am not the same person, you are not the same person. So the periphery is changing. The non-essential is changing. Body is changing, mind is changing, thoughts are changing, emotions are changing. But the core thing at the very center of our being, that our very center, that is not changing. If that is also changing, then it is meaningless. My center and the cosmic center has to be the same. My center and your center has to be the same. Otherwise, your spirituality is meaningless, your life is also meaningless. Then we will all have to commit suicides. Then nothing in life and existence can be meaningful. Bear these things very, very clear in your mind as a starting point, as an approach. So from the changing, we attain to the changeless. So that so-called Chaitanya, so-called witnessing consciousness, so-called consciousness, the non-dual, consciousness is unchanging. Why unchanging? It is not born at all. Where is the question of changing, dying, moving? We will further go. I'll take you to the point where you will realize what I'm saying. So there are two standpoints. My standpoint from my side I'm saying, and there is a cosmic thing from the cosmic being side. So there are two standpoints. My center, my periphery, my center, the cosmic being's periphery and the cosmic center. Now I'll take you, stretch it further to another layer. See, when I'm saying cosmic being, let's say if you go by Rigveda is saying what? All this is what is called Sat. Okay, they are saying all this is existence. And you further probe and ask the Upanishadic sage, if you ask him from where this Sat has come, he's saying it has come from Asat. So what they are calling that as non-existence, Asat. Non-existence means pure nothingness. All words are crap. Your words are not going to help. You call Ishvara, you call Brahman, you call whatever. These are all just words. Words are not going to help you. Any word. Okay. So I am taking now a third one. Let us say this cosmic being has come from the non-existence, the Asat. Now correlate my center, the center of the cosmic being, and then let us say Asat. They all have to merge and become one to experience oneness, to experience unification. Science is also talking about unified theory, eventually, theory of everything. They also want that matter, energy, all forces, they all have to unify somewhere. There has to be some unifying point. So spirituality is talking, that's why yoga means a union. So experiencing that oneness. So Kabir is saying, I started my journey like the drop, and this drop has merged with the ocean and has become one with the ocean. How this drop will become one with the ocean? Only when it dissolves into the ocean and forgets all about identities. It is no more drop, it has already become the ocean. That is the union. No. Same like that. A wave was part of the ocean. It was thinking that it is separate. It was thinking that it is a separate entity. And then eventually it has merged into the ocean and became one with the ocean. And it lost all identity. So the union has come, oneness has come, experience of that non-dual. Then what is existing? So when the wave is no more, when the drop is no more, whatever that is existing, which we are saying just as an example, we are saying ocean. Now you think from the ocean's point of view. From that standpoint you see, it is neither a circle nor a center. There is no, because circle and center has come in relativity. Because we are talking in terms of, you are still there, I am still there. We are talking through our mind. That's why we are saying, that's why this relativity has come. So in a relative perspective, we are saying center and periphery, my center and your center, my periphery and your periphery. Now this cosmic being which has come from Asat, the Sat has come from Asat, the existence has come from the non-existence, and when it merges and when it becomes one with the non-existence, where is the question of center and circle now? Because all is that is Brahman. What is the ultimate truth? Ultimate truth is that non-dual one. Neither you are there nor cosmic being is there. Only that truth alone is there. So from that standpoint, from the standpoint of the ultimate reality, Brahman, where is the question of center, circle and all that stuff? That's why we are saying Brahman is above all attributes. Now where is the question of attributes? All attributes, all sankalpas, they are coming from our mind. They are just words, crap. They are coming from this monkey mind. This monkey mind has to become a monk mind. It will become a monk mind only when it dissolves into the non-dual, the whole. By the way, monkey mind and monk mind, I only use them as metaphors. Don't misunderstand. There is idiot who says the monk who has sold his Ferrari. Why this monk has sold the Ferrari? And in monk, I am telling you, one who has shaven off his head, he is wearing the robes of a monk, he is wearing Rudraksha Mala, he is putting vibhuti here and there, and he is coming in the robes of a monk, a sannyasa, and he is calling he is a monk. This has nothing to do. He has not yet attained to monkhood. Let that be very, very clear. He is a joker. That is a crap thing. By wearing clothes of a monk, you cannot attain to monkhood. Somebody is becoming a dasa, he is having a juttu, he has shaven off his head, and he is coming with a laptop, he is talking all that crap. What is there to renunciate? Tell me. You are not giving your stupidity, you are not giving up your notions, you are not giving up your wrong ideas, you are not giving up your dharanas. By giving up these clothes, giving up your house, giving up your job, giving up your family, giving up this world, what will you attain? Just think. See, there is a beggar. Poor chap, he has nothing. So he is asking for food. Obviously, he will desire for few things. He doesn't have anything. But let us say there is a tycoon. And this tycoon also thinks like a beggar. Then what is the difference? This beggar is far, far better. This small beggar, the street beggar, who is asking for alms, who is asking for food, for basic needs. This beggar is far, far better compared to the tycoon who is thinking like a beggar. Think on these lines when it comes to desires and needs. Think on these lines when it comes to desires and desirelessness. So you have to kill this Tyagi and Bhogi. The one who is only indulging and the one who is abstaining from all these things. Both are idiots. Both are monkeys in different postures. And it will not help. So we'll have to bring in this mindfulness so that we attain to equanimity, so that this balance thing arises in us, which Buddha is also saying samyama. This samyama can come. See, if you go into Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Patanjali is very clearly saying when samyama, equanimity will come. He is talking about Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharna, Dhyan, Samadhi. In that he is dividing into two parts, Bahirangas and Antarangas. Which are Bahirangas? The external, that you are doing with your external body. Whatever that you are doing through your external body are called Bahirangas in that eightfold Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So, Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, these four are Bahirangas. Pratyahar, Dharna, Dhyan, Samadhi. Now, these four are your Antarangas. So, Patanjali is saying when you excel into these four, ultimately when Samadhi happens, then equanimity automatically comes in. Samyama comes in. That is the balance. And this balance is individual. I am not going to give you my balance to you. You are not going to give me your balance to me. And we are not going to compare my balance and your balance, because it is totally subjective thing. And I told you how far the science can go. Science should go as far as there is something called objectivity. How far spirituality should go? It should go as far as and all subjectivity loses and only the subject remains. See, this subject we have to understand very clearly, because it is being used with different meanings at different places. For example, in law they use subject. Subject means the law that you enforce on the subject, like the king and the subjects. So in that context, the king and the subjects are the people below the king who is supervising the king. And in medicine, when they say these subjects are subjected with some kind of medicine, so the patients are the subjects. And here, when we are in spirituality, when we are talking about the subject, the context here is totally different. Here we are talking about subject only, that should remain in Srashta and Drashta. What should remain is the non-dual consciousness, which I am saying in my words, the supreme consciousness. You give whatever name, you call Ishvara, you call Nirvana, you call Dhamma, you call whatever. Now words are just words. It has to be part of your and my deeper inner experience. So it's an experiential thing, not a theory thing, not an intellectual thing. Words, intellectual, all these are not going to help you. They're just on the path. They're maybe on the beginning thing. Just like we begin on the path of meditation. So I'm saying even doing is also meditation, but not ultimate. As a culmination, it is arriving. So it is being. Being means now there are no divisions. Drop has become the ocean, wave has become the ocean. That is it. So there is no confusion. This is where I wanted to bring in this insight from my side. I wanted to make these things very clear. So Hinduism or Buddhism, there is no contradiction. There is no ambiguity. So there you have a center, I have a center. That center is something called, we are saying, Atman. Atman, don't go in search of Atman like a thing. It is a nothing. It is a no thing. You will discover it as a light of your consciousness, as a light of your soul. And it is never going to be a thing. It is going to be a no thing. That's why it is called nothing. So it should culminate there. So my center, your center, cosmic center, when they all merge into the non-being, the question of center and periphery does not even arise. And all these being spoken, center, periphery, all these are being spoken in a relative perspective. Please see my video on perspectives, on drashtikon, that glass full and water, glass half empty and half full. Please go and see that. It will give you far deeper insights. So when it comes to perspectives, when it comes to relativity. So we have to move on the path of relativity in order to attain to the non-relative, in order to attain to the non-doer. So that is it. I am ending it. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Tam Soma Jyotirgamaya. Thank you.